Okay.
Well, we have a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
For more people.
I don't think so. Ken's good.
Here's a question. Would you be interested in lighting candles or opening our service? No idea. Great. Great. I'm sorry, tell me your school.
I think that,
You think that would be rather than right? But they're going to be nice. And also, people often throw it to the dog after you say, hi, I know you met before, but I'm Susan. And I'm like, thanks. I appreciate it.
enjoy your summer.
Well, this is the time we actually Well, or, like Zoom, in my experience, Zoom can work well if everyone is on Zoom and someone is screen sharing over here. If you're just streaming from the sanctuary, that's not so fun, like who needs that?
I don't know, I'm still practicing law. And I'm not like absorbing for
I was a paralegal for a public for 15 years, so I know tiny what it looks like to practice law.
I had several years ago, since still, that very nice name. Dinklesfield and Dinklesfield.
Oh, I heard of Dinklesfield.
Dinklesfield and
Yeah, also the Dinklesfield Auditorium in Stanford, right? Oh, that is a special privilege again here. All right, cool. I guess we should do the service.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I made a joke in the afternoon on Yom Kippur that anyone who came to the afternoon service on Yom Kippur got gold stars for attending services that, you know, were in the midst of a million other services that everyone was attending. I think the extra gold stars go to the folks who come to the Shabbat immediately following all of the holidays. So well done, those of you who are in the room and those of you who are online. It's wonderful to see you. It's nice to be entering into this period of the year where we're starting Shabbat in the synagogue at exactly what feels like the right time. The sun is starting to set. It's actually the right time to light candles. So it feels a particularly welcoming and meaningful Shabbat evening, I think, in that sense. We're going to start our service by welcoming in the angels to join us. And I'll give you a fun little fact about Shalom Aleichem, which we'll sing in a moment. I had a friend when I was working at a university years ago who refused to sing the last two verses of Shalom Aleichem, because in the first two verses, we invite, first we just say, peace to you, messengers of peace, and then we invite the angels to come and join us. In the third verse, we ask the angels to bless us, and in the fourth verse, we ask them to leave. And he always felt like that was a little rude. We shouldn't be saying, now bless us and go, but I think it's not so much that we're commanding them as that we're recognizing that Shabbat is this sacred time where the heavens and the earth interact in a way that they normally wouldn't. And so I think we're less asking them to bless us and go than we are acknowledging the fact that they're going to come and bless us, that this is a time of sacred interaction. So we will celebrate that with Shalom Aleichem. You can find that in your prayer books on page 24.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu Nile Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. B'tzehem l'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
As the messengers of peace depart, their spirit and their warmth and the warmth of Shabbat stay with us, and we increase that warmth by kindling Shabbat lights. I'd like to invite Ben and Ethel Stern, thank you, to please come up and light those candles. And as they come up, I will offer a reading on page 3 of our prayer books. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lechad likner shel Shabbat lechad likner shel Shabbat. Amen.
continue now with a beautiful prayer written by mystics in the land of Israel who would go out into the fields on Shabbat evening and greet Shabbat, imagining Shabbat to be coming to them in the form of their beloved, whom they would be reunited with every week for 25 hours. We're going to sing to Shabbat as if Shabbat were our own beloved with Lecha Dodi, which you can find in your prayer book on page 20. And when we come to the final verse, I will motion for us to rise and face the door to welcome Shabbat. Page 20.
Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Panei Shabbat, Nikabla, Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmi'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad, U'shemo echad, L'shem u'tiferet ve'yitilah, Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Nikabla, Hitoreri, Ki va'orech u'miori, Uri shedaberi, Kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Panei Shabbat, Nikabla, Ho'i v'shalom, Ateret bala, Gam besimcha u'zola, Toch emuneam segula, Bo'i chala. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Nikabla.
Having welcomed Shabbat into our midst, we now transition into Ma'ariv, into the evening prayers, and as we often do, we transition using the Chatzi Kaddish, the partial Kaddish, which you can find on page 26.
Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'yomad yivarach Yerutev yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayedecho beit Yisrael. Bagala, u'v'zman kari v'yemeru.
Amen.
Yehi Shmei Rabbah mevarach, le'alam u'l'alamei almaya, Yitbarach, vayishtabach, vayitpar, v'yiromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitale, v'yitalau, shemei dekudesha b'richu, leila min kol birchata, v'ashirata, tushbechata, v'nechemata, Ba'amiran bi'alma ve'yimeru. Amen.
We rise for the call to prayer, the Baruch Hu, on page 28.
Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Lai la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim. We join together at the top of page 31. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, HaMa'ariv Aravim. We continue on page 32 with Ahavat Olam.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Israel, Amecha Avta, Amcha Avta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta, Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochbenu, Ukumenu na'asiach bechuchecha, V'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, Uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed, Ki hem chayenu, Ve'orech yameinu, Uvahem nege yomam v'layla, Nege yomam v'layla, Ve'ahavat chal tasir, Mimenu le'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
We continue with the Shema on page 34.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
You may be seated. We continue with Ve'ahavta on page 36.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavecha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha ve'hayu הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בעיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Let's read responsively at the bottom of page 39. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth.
The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love.
From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way.
Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces.
Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed.
Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. Yai lai lai la lai la lai 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 yai lai lai la lai la lai 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 yai lai la lai lai yai lai 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 yai lai 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 mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi chamocha na'edar b'kodesh nora tehilot Osef ele, Nora tehilot Osef ele. Malachutecha ra'u vanecha, Bokei hayam lifnei Moshe. Ze Elianu ve'amru, Ze Eliani ve'amaru. Adonai imlo. Le'olam va'ed Adonai imlo Le'olam va'ed
V'ne'emar ki fada Adonai et Yaakov u'galom miyad chazak mimenu Baruch ata Adonai ga'al Yisrael. Praised are you, Adonai, who redeems Israel. We turn now to the reading at the bottom of page 43. Give us a place to rest, Adonai our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, haporez sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim. We continue with V'shamru, our celebration of keeping Shabbat, on page 44.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש.
These words are so resonant this evening as we are beginning the Torah cycle anew with Bereshit, and we have just sung about how in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day God ceased from work and was refreshed. And of course, tomorrow morning we will read exactly that from the Torah. But we also are enjoying the fact that as on every Shabbat, we have the opportunity to rest, be refreshed, and be rejuvenated by one another's presence. So let's rise together now for the heart of our service, the Amidah, which begins on page 46.
Adonai sefatai tivtachu fi hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarai, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibur v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei ha'kol, V'zocher chazdei avot va'imahot, Umevi gula livnei v'neihem, Leman shemo be'ahava, Melech ozer u'moshia u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen ad Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah, Ata gibur leolam Adonai, Mechaye hakol ata rav lahoshia, Mechalchel chayim bechesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, Snomech noflim verofech cholim, Umatir hasurim, Kayem emunato lishenei afar, michamocha bal gvurot, umido melach, melech memit umachaye, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman ata lahachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye ha'kol. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kroshim b'chol yom yahalucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el ha'kadosh.
You may be seated. We continue together at the top of page 55. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat. Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu b'amcha Yisrael. We continue with the English at the top of page 57. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer. Wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands, you are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'odcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. I've mentioned before that one of the rabbis who taught me a practice every time I am preparing to say Modim of trying to think of very specific things for which I am grateful. I can think of a lot of things one might be grateful for right now. We just had, I think, quite a spectacular, beautiful holiday season that I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for the relative quiet that is following for a little bit now. I'm grateful that in the midst of a tumultuous, high-stakes election, we have some really excellent programming coming up here in the next few weeks that's going to help us kind of process all of the issues that are involved there and help model for us what respectful adult debate looks like. I'm grateful for the fact that the weather's still gorgeous. So I'm going to give everybody a moment just to think of a couple of things, specific things for which you are grateful on this Shabbat. We read together at the top of page 59. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, Hatov Shimcha Ulecha Na'eh Lehodot. And now we'll sing our beautiful prayer for peace, something that we are always in need of and especially in need of at this moment. Shalom Rav, which you can find on page 60.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki Atahu Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom. Ki Atahu Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov be'enecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
Baruch atah Adonai hamvarech et amo Yisrael bashalom. Blessed are you, Adonai, who blesses your people Israel and all people with peace. Peace is one of the few things that we often ask for on Shabbat, and the other thing that we often also ask for is healing of mind and body and spirit for all those in our community, all those whom we love who are in need of it. And on this Shabbat, we are thinking specifically for healing of Shandel bat Frida Malka, Julie Borikoff, Steve Toplinski, Esther Cohen, Chazan Sar Rachel bat Yocheved Alexander, Avram ben Aftuli, Sophia Rubenstein, David Rotter, Keith Mandel, Ela bat Natan Vishoshana, Dr. Susie Mendelson, Michaela Hellenberg, Susan Garrison, Peter Rotter, Roger Cook, Neil Pinsky, Layla Rosen, David Kleinman, Wendy Schuster, Ann Becker, Kathy Baker, Diane Redman, Carolyn Newman, Devorah Leah, Kelly Adeniak, Ricky Spiegel, Carol Rort Trainer, Wendy Pollock, Terry Heyman, Eli Benzman, George Grimm, Patrick Heppy, Morgan Hughes, Simon Leo and Noah Michael, Claire Vivian Gaster, Sybil Suvalski, Bruce Sherman, Shalom Ben Lazar, Cy Cohen, Harava Not Bat Margalit, Gary Elderbrook, Olivia Jane, Lise Moulton, Jeff Berlin, Linnea Katz-Petted, Friedlin Veal, Charlene Bruton, Luca Eisenberg, and Carol Miller. And if there's anyone whom you are thinking of for healing on this Shabbat, healing of mind, body, or spirit, whatever kind of healing they may need, I invite you to hold their names in your heart as we sing Mishaberach together, which you can find in your prayer books on page 253, page 253.
Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
We'll take a few moments now for silent prayer, and after silent prayer, we will come back together with Oseh Shalom.
Say shalom, shalom bimromav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Say say shalom, Israel, V'imru, Ve'alko Israel, Amen.
As I mentioned a little earlier, we are enjoying right now the privilege of restarting our Torah reading, our annual cycle. We have a saying in Pirkei Avot, turn it and turn it, for everything is in it. That seems to be true because we've been doing this for hundreds of years and we find new things to talk about every time. And I hope this year will be no different. I want to start with a question, actually, this evening. It's a show of hands question, and it's for everybody, including Paul and Mark. The question is, how many people here went to either Hebrew school or Sunday school? Okay. The next question is, how many people in Hebrew school or Sunday school were told that the story of Adam and Eve is sort of a zoomed-in, detailed version of the story of the creation of human beings that we get first in the beginning part of Genesis, but then we get the sort of zoom-in on human beings in the next chapter? How many people were taught that? Not everybody. Okay. So often, people are taught that. I asked my partner earlier this evening, Cantor Richard Newman, whether he had been taught that, and he said he had. I think I was as well. I have something to tell you. That is almost certainly not the case, and I'll tell you why. So we really have two very different stories of creation at the beginning of the Torah. We have one that takes place in the first chapter of Genesis running into the third verse of the second chapter. And then starting in chapter 2, verse 4, we have a second story. And they're very different in a number of respects, which is not in and of itself a reason to think that they don't coexist, but their language is very different. They use different terms for God. One of them uses almost exclusively Elohim, the other one Adonai Elohim. Those come from different traditions usually. The language overall, the sort of poetry of it is different. So there's general academic consensus that it seems like different authors or different schools of authorship wrote the two stories. But there's also at least one actual contradiction between them. And the contradiction is sort of easy to miss. So in the first story, we have 6 days of creation, and we are told very explicitly what is created on each day, and it's very beautiful and very orderly. On the first day, light and darkness are created and separated from each other. On the second day, the waters are separated from each other in a similar way. A firmament, a rakia, is created to separate the waters above from the waters below, and the waters above become the heavens, which, by the way, the word for heaven in Hebrew is shamayim, which if you wanted to, you could parse out to sham mayim, which then would mean the water over there. So that's kind of neat. But the heavens above and then the seas below are separated. On the third day, dry land emerges and plants grow. This is very important, so remember this. On the, I can count, fourth day, on the fourth day, although light and darkness have already been created, the celestial bodies are created, so the stars and the sun and the moon. On the fifth day, fish and birds, basically the things that fill the heavens and the seas, are created. And on the sixth and final day of creation, land animals are created, and finally human beings. So that's the sequence in the first story. But then, in the second story, we read that this is when human beings are created. It is when no shrub of the field was yet on earth, and no grasses of the field had yet sprouted, because the eternal God had not sent rain upon the earth, and there were no human beings to till the soil. So in the second story, human beings come before plants, and in the first story, plants come before human beings. So it seems like these are probably two different traditions about how the world was created, both of which we preserve in the Torah, which is, of course, the typical Jewish mode, to preserve as much as we possibly can, even, and maybe even especially if it is internally contradictory. We like to acknowledge that there are many truths in the world and they don't always agree well with each other. But even leaving aside that clear contradiction, you might have thought that these were very separate stories just because the way they unfold is so different. So I described the sequence of events in the first story, and at least from a sort of a human perspective, it seems like a very logical progression. And there's also, you may have noticed, some symmetry in it. There's some symmetry between days 1 and 4, days 2 and 5, and days 3 and 6, which it's a little easier to see in a chart. But we get light, water, earth, and then we get the things that produce light, the things that dwell in the water and in the skies, and the things that dwell on the earth. So there's all of this beautiful poetry and symmetry and elegance to this story. And it's clear that it was very carefully planned by God. And God is constantly remarking in this first story upon how good God sees God's creation to be. God creates something and says, this is good, and does this over and over. So it all seems like it's just going flawlessly. The second story is a little messier, I would say. The human beings are a little problematic in the second story, and they cause some trouble. And God seems maybe a little less omniscient and a little less planful in the second story. Maybe not, but if you just sort of take it at face value, it seems, for example, like God doesn't fully anticipate that the first human being will be lonely and will need a partner of some kind. And even if God did anticipate that, it's ambiguous in the text, God tries something that doesn't work first. God brings all of the different animals that exist to visit with that first human being, and none of them prove to be a suitable partner for them. And so then God decides to put the human being to sleep and take one of his ribs and create from that rib a woman who will then be the counterpart to the first man. But it seems like God has to sort of come to that through trial and error. And also, God does other curious things, like ask Adam where he is. Now, that might be a rhetorical device. When God says, Adam, where are you? Maybe God knows exactly where Adam is. But either God is genuinely asking because God does not know, or God is asking as a sort of setup for Adam because God already knows Adam has done something Adam wasn't supposed to do. So in either case, it's not all going exactly according to a very tidy plan. So here's the question I have. The question I'm going to ask, and then I'm going to actually give folks an opportunity to answer. I'm going to bring this microphone down. The question is, which of these accounts of creation speaks to you more, and why? Is it the very elegant, orderly, planful account, or is it the somewhat messier, more emergent and experimental account? Which one speaks to you more and why? So does anybody bravely want to be the first person to try to answer that question? And I will bring you the microphone. I'm just going to hand it to somebody if somebody doesn't raise a hand. I'm just going to choose someone.
Rabbi, thank you.
Thank you.
I think that the second one does, because I think there is far more disorder in our world that needs to be conquered. And this is a way of looking at it. I think the stories that begin Bereshit are almost archetypes in how human beings can and may successfully or unsuccessfully enter into relationship with God. And we see rebellion as one possibility. We see sheer obedience. And I think that we know in time we will have Abram who will give us a further look. And then ultimately Yisrael, where we are today. We are Israel who struggles and wrestles with God. And so I think this is a great beginning as we watch those human beings.
Thank you. That's a beautiful answer. Does anybody else, by the way, there is not a right answer to this question. I don't have a right answer in mind. But would anyone else like to respond to which of these stories of creation speaks to them more? And when I hand you the mic, as you I'm sure well know, please do hold it close to your mouth.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm gonna wrestle for the sake of heaven with my dear friend Roger Karp, but because of the way I was raised, and that's really what informs this, is that one, I was raised in a very orderly and tidy household, and also I was raised on Hallmark. Hallmark movies with good, positive, happy endings, that everything wound up exactly as it should. And so because of those two reasons, it resonates so deeply with me that God had a plan and an order, and it went exactly like it should have. So I will offer that as something that sits very warmly in my heart, and I hope that's the way it is. But I know it's certainly far more like my dear friend, Mr. Karp.
Yes, please.
I walked in very late, so could you please tell me what was the question?
The question, may I take the microphone? The question is, between the two stories of creation, one of which is extremely orderly, where all 6 days are explained and planned out and flow easily from one to the next, there's that story, and then there's the second story of creation with Adam and Eve, which is a lot messier, and there are more missteps and so forth. Which of those two stories speaks to you more, and why?
Okay. Well, I'll just say the one I like better is the one with Adam and Eve, because it's pretty simple. And I like the story about the tree of knowledge, and he the snake involved in telling, to her, get him to eat from that tree, right? Isn't that? And then he eats from the tree naively, and everything falls apart. And I think that's what we do in our world. Look what's going on in politics right now.
Let's not look too
I'm not gonna say any names, but our whole world can fall apart so easily because of lies, lies. Now, my life is truth. That's why I come here. Jewish religion is truth. That's why I love it. And I cry for it. Is my word, truth, MS or Emet, however you want to say. But this is why I come to temple. This is why I believe in Israel. This is why I believe in Judaism. And so we need to think about all the words that come out of our mouths and always speak the truth as Jews.
Thank you. That was very powerful. And I do think truth is something that we are all striving to find and to speak. I also think you pointed out something I hadn't really thought about on this occasion, which is, in many ways, the second story is a better story, right? The first story, there's not a lot of conflict. Everything just sort of unfolds in this lovely fashion. The second story has, tension and conflict and all of the things you want from a narrative. So in that sense, it's very satisfying as a story. But it is also telling us something very important, very true about how human beings are. Does anybody else want to take a stab at this question, to use a weirdly violent metaphor? Okay, well, those are excellent responses. So I will take this back up to the bima now. And thank you all for thinking this through with me and on your own. I'm sure everyone who didn't speak also is kind of chewing on this question of which of these narratives speaks to you more. And I worded that a little vaguely on purpose. I'm going to say something that I'm certain is going to shock no one, which is that I really like both stories, and I like them in different ways. And a lot of it you've all already touched on. But I will say that the first creation story for me is very resonant, partly because I also grew up in a very orderly household, but also because I find it very aspirational. And I find it a particular kind of comforting. The idea that there is a plan and things can be ordered to that plan and that it's possible to execute a plan in a way that produces the result that you want, that's a beautiful idea, and it's sometimes true. It's why I often like to follow recipes when I cook, because then I sort of know what's supposed to happen, and then if the recipe comes out the way it says it will, it's immensely satisfying. But also, if I'm trying to do a large project, or I'm trying to write a High Holy Day sermon or something, I want to go through some kind of an orderly process. And I find that inspiring and a certain kind of comforting. But I actually find the second story also very comforting in a very different way. Basically for the reason that you said, Roger, which is that it reflects, I think, quite well the messiness of humanity and of the human world, and of our attempts to do right by one another, to be ethical people, to be kind and caring and respectful toward one another, and to be in relationship with God. And all of those things are a constant process of creation, and all of them involve hiccups and setbacks and missteps. And the beauty of that story is that it teaches us that those have always been part of the world and always will be. I heard a student in Sunday school the other day say something about they're really glad that the heroes of the Torah aren't perfect because we're not perfect, so what would we do if they were? And I think that's a really important observation. That story reminds us that even when our best laid plans go awry, we can understand that at least the way that we tell the story, even God's best laid plans sometimes go awry. So if that can be true because we are who we are, then certainly it can be true for us as well. And it still can produce even a process of creation that is that fraught and that disorganized, can produce something extraordinary and beautiful. And in many ways, I think that's what our lives are these messy processes of creation that, if we are able to look at them in the right way, nevertheless produce something really beautiful in the uniqueness of each of us as an individual and the way that we interact with one another and our attempts to relate to God. The only other thing I think I want to mention is it's clear from all of these stories, from both of these stories, that creation takes a lot of effort and takes a lot of either planning or adapting or, at any rate, a great deal of work. But the other thing that's interesting about them is what they don't really require is resources, because depending on how you read them, God essentially creates things out of nothing in these stories. There is no world, and God creates a world, right? There's formlessness and there's void. There's tohu vavohu. There's this sort of mishmash, as Rabbi Noah said 2 nights ago. But out of that comes a concrete world full of life. And I find it useful to reflect on those stories and to think about the fact that when we read at least the first story, we see the word bara over and over again, the word create, but it's a word that's only used in relation to God. It's an act of creation only God can do, because only God can create something out of nothing. We always have to create something out of something. We all need resources of some sort. We need the care of one another. We need food and water and shelter. We need all kinds of different resources to create. So as we go into this new year, I just want to invite us all to reflect on how we want to create in this new year, what we want to create out of ourselves and our lives, and what we need in order to do that, because unlike God, we won't be creating from nothing. We'll be creating from whatever resources we have. And then also to take that one step further and think about if there are certain resources that we require in order to create ourselves and our lives the way we want to, are others perhaps in need of those resources too? And how can we help to provide them? So going forward into this new year, my wish for us is that we should offer each other and ourselves whatever resources we need to create the best lives that we can, and whether that creation process turns out to be orderly and elegant or messy, either way, we know that it has a spark of the divine in it, and we know that it can produce something truly beautiful. Shabbat Shalom. Thanks. We're going to move toward concluding our service now, and we're going to start that process with the Aleinu prayer, and I'd like to invite Beverly Ugent and Linda Berlin to please come join me on the bima and open the ark doors so that we can pray Aleinu in front of our Torahs, and I would like to invite everyone else to please rise as able, and we'll turn in our prayer books to page 282.
Aleinu l'shapeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הרצות, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. Our thoughts now turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. On this Shabbat, I want to mention, though we cannot quite yet say Kaddish for her, that we have lost Debbie Rice, and she will be laid to rest on Monday. But I wanted to acknowledge her loss this evening, or our loss of her. We are in the period of Shiva, of the first 7 days of mourning for Arlene Minkoff. And we're in the period of Shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning, for Irving Bratzlaw, Mark David Cook, Carol Dubin, Jackie Gilbert, Stan Lieberman, and Beverly Mislove. And in addition, on the Shabbat, we are remembering the following yahrzeits, members of our community who died at this time in years past. We remember Fred Alderman, Jean Bard, Dalvin Bales, Albert Cohen, Ida Cohen, Joseph Cohen, Stephen Eichenbaum, Benjamin Feen, Eudice Cater Feller, Evelyn Franklin, Robert Gill, Jenny Goldberg, Martin Goldberg, Sonia Galopol, Libby Grossman, Fania Himmelreich, Bertha Kaplan, Phyllis Kaplan, Sydney N. Kohlenberg, Rosalind Koritsky, Erwin Leon, Cecile Lozoff, Marvin Miller, Joan Meckler, Edward Neubauer, Jacob B. Osnoff, Jerry Randy, Beatrice Ritz, Nettie Rosen, May Rosenberg, Neil Rubnitz, Jerome Sadowski, Samuel Monroe Safir, Sam Schwartz, Jennifer Shavers, Florence Hughes Silver, Miriam Stein, Florence Stern, Margaret Topple, Judy Wallace, and Rose Williams. And if you are remembering someone whose name I did not mention or whose name I mispronounced, please feel free to share that name as my eyes pass around the room.
Dal Bayless.
in honor of all those whom we have mentioned and all those whom we hold in our hearts, and of course in honor of all those for whom there are none to say Kaddish, we now rise as one community and we join together in the Mourner's Kaddish on page 294 in your prayer books, page 294. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'almei almaya. Yit barach v'yishtabach v'yit pa'ar v'yit romam v'yit naseh v'yit hadar v'yit aleh v'yit halal shmei d'kudsha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran ba'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates peace in the heavens enable us to create peace with one another here on earth and to comfort one another when we are bereaved. And together we say, Amen. You may be seated. We do have a few announcements to offer this evening. We will have Torah study at 9 a.m. tomorrow and Shabbat services following at 10 a.m. I will be there. I hope you will too. On October 31st, as I alluded to earlier, we will hold our first debate. This will be between Rabbi David Saperstein and Dr. Tevi Troy. The debate subject will be, as chosen by the underwriter of the debate, be it resolved that progressive and liberal values and policies better serve American Jewry and Israel than conservative values. And this event is generously sponsored by the Einhorn family. We thank them very much for sponsoring the event. And on November 8th, we will have the Sanford J. Ettinger Memorial Lecture, which will be with guest speaker Mordecai Lee, who will speak during Shabbat services. And that event is graciously underwritten by the Sanford J. Ettinger Memorial Lecture Fund. And I believe in that talk he will address whatever results we have at that point regarding the election. And I think that will be very much on all of our minds. So it should be a helpful evening for working through our own thoughts and feelings as well. On November 10th, that's a Sunday at 10 a.m., Congregation Shalom's Voices for Justice Committee presents Food and Housing Insecurity in Our Community, a Jewish Perspective. This program will be a panel discussion featuring Sister McCannon Brown, Dan Fleischman, Heidi Gould, and I will be moderating the panel. And there will be a Q&A session following the discussion, and also there will be a light nosh. We still have space on our adult civil rights journey, traveling April 23rd to 27th in 2025. This is a trip to Memphis, Birmingham, Montgomery, Selma, and Atlanta to take a deep dive into the history of slavery, racism, and the civil rights movement. So if you are able to join us for that, I think it will be a very, very special trip. Please do. And there are many other things happening, of course, as well, so watch your shofar and your emails and Facebook and the webpage for all of the happenings at Shalom, including more upcoming activities, and we hope you will join us when you can. Thank you. We're going to conclude our service now with Kiddush and with a closing song. So please join us in rising one more time for the Kiddush, and if you'd like to follow along in your prayer book, you can find it on page 5.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava v'ratzon yinchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי באנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. אמן.
L'chaim. We're going to conclude our service with Ma Yafeh Hayom. How beautiful is this day of Shabbat. You can find the words on page 10, but there aren't very many, so you may not need them. And I want to just say before we conclude, thank you so much to Mark Cohen for joining me on the Bima this evening and leading us so beautifully in prayer. And thank you, Paul Caston, for also contributing so much to our prayer, to the music and the beauty of our prayer this evening. And thank you all for being here with us.
יפה היום, שבת שלום. מה יפה היום, שבת שלום. שבת, שבת שלום. שבת, שבת שלום. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.